In my vlog on Shropshire Folklore of Mary Webb, I mentioned that Mary was heavily influenced by Charlotte Burne, and her jointly authored book, Shropshire Folklore, A Sheaf of Gleanings. I actually find that A Sheaf of Gleanings is ready available both from booksellers and online. So I've decided to begin a series based from the large and detailed book. Where I can, I'll augment it with additional materials. I think I also need to apologise that it'll mostly use still photography that I can find on the internet. As from Indonesia, I cannot find relevant video clips, and I'm most unlikely to return to the UK again. Charlotte Sophie Burne, or Lotty, 1850 to 1823. Charlotte was actually born just over the border in Staffordshire at Morton Vicarage. It's said that she inherited her interest in folklore from her mother, also called Charlotte Burne, but this time Charlotte Anna Burne, 1820 to 1893. Charlotte's father, Sambrook Thomas Higgins Burne, 1822 to 1861, was born into a wealthy Staffordshire family. He matriculated at Trinity College, Oxford, in 1841, but did not take a degree. But it would seem that he was disinherited by his father. He was assisted by his brother, the Reverend Thomas Burne, whom was the perpetual curate of Morton in Staffordshire. However, the family moved to Summerhill, Edgemond in Shropshire in 1854, having exhausted their welcome at the Morton Vicarage. And Lottie seems to make a big point of this, that she's finally living in Shropshire, but the truth is all of these spaces I speak of are just running along the border of Shropshire and Staffordshire. They're very similar places, to be honest. Now, her father's said to have taken to shooting, hunting and drinking. In 1857 he was twice thrown from his horse, and as events surrounding it were somewhat taboo, it's fair to assume that he was drunk, but this led to his premature death in 1861. Lottie suffered a serious illness during her early years. Conditions of ill health and obesity would impede her physical well-being throughout her life. In 1875, Burne became friendly with Georgina Frederick Jackson, who was collecting material for a Shropshire workbook, 1879, and its companion work with the provisional title of Folklore Gleanings. Jackson's demise led Burne to take over her material, adding her own collection of tales to produce Shropshire Folklore, A Sheaf of Gleanings. This probably explains the claim that the book was jointly authored. In the 1890s, she resided at Pyebirch, Eccleshall, again in Staffordshire, where she collaborated with the local folklorist and folk song collector Miss Alice Annie Keary of Stoke-on-Trent. Together they spent 3 years, around 1890 to 93, collecting material locally in North Staffordshire. While a number of joint papers were published, Burne moved to Cheltenham somewhere around 1894, and the project failed to be realised in a book form. She became the first female president of the Folklore Society, 1909 to 1911, and indeed was active in the Folklore Society for some 40 years. Shortly after the Berlin Wall came down, I went on a bus trip of Eastern Europe, where we met our bus in Ostend, but first had to catch an early ferry from Folkestone. We caught the last train available to Folkestone. I believed that there would be a terminal where we could sleep in. In any case, it was midsummer and we weren't concerned about sleeping on a bench. How wrong we were! There was a breeze blowing off the channel and there was nowhere to shelter. After a while, it felt like hours of shivering. A very friendly couple from Stockport approached us, offering their car as a shelter for us. It wasn't long before they mentioned their love for Morris dancing. Now at the time we were both ravers, going out every weekend raving, and could not hide our utter incomprehension and, I have to admit, disdain. So I apologise to these hospitable people and to all Morris dancers watching this vlog. But yes, I do have some prejudices. In my vlog on witchcraft and traditions, I've already mentioned Morris dancers. And it would seem that Morris dancers were very much a part of so many Shropshire traditions. During hard winters for frozen bricklayers and quarrymen to get up a party and dance in the street of the neighbouring towns and villages to raise money. The Broseley Morris dancers were apparently very elaborately dressed with ribbons and coloured paper. They were also very lively, and the role of the fool was very prominent. They blackened the faces of all performers with soot. This was to appear as though they were Africans, or Moors as they would have been called at the time. A tradition I recall from the Shrewsbury Carnival as a child, although using boot polish. Now I was very young at the time, and at the time Shrewsbury was very monocultural. I'd never seen a real black person before, and my father had to explain all that was happening to me. I'm not sure I really understood his explanation. Morris dancer was a customary Christmas activity of the young men around Bishop's Castle. They accompanied or concluded with a dancer's song. A party who danced in the street in Newport in a hard winter of 1878 to 9 also sang, despite this being uncommon amongst the county's dancers. However, the dancers seen in Shrewsbury or Newport were apparently not indigenous, but amongst the Sevenside watermen, the ironworkers, colliers and potters of Madeley, Coalbrookdale and Broseley, and also the Clee Hill quarrymen. Wenlock seems to have been quite a centre for Morris dancers also. And nevertheless, Shrewsbury and Shropshire had been a centre for folk dancing, going back to the Middle Ages. In fact, the tradition of Morris dancing, masque dancing, folk dance and murmurs and mystery plays go hand in hand, or at least they did in Shropshire. The story of George and the Dragon seems to have been particularly popular. However, in West Shropshire, more formal plays were normal. These were generally performed at the wakes for the respective saints of the area. A stage was erected on 2 wagons outside some building, usually in connection with a public house. It was so arranged that the players, as they made their exit into the building itself, where they feasted on cakes and ale while awaiting their next call. As a rule, no more than 2 players were on the boards at the same time, except on the final scene. On the stage, in full view of the audience, sat the chairman with his book, who acted as a prompter and callboy in one. The actors received no pay, but were entertained by the innkeeper free of expense. The country folk seem to have come from miles round to the representations, as many as 1,000 people being present. The performance itself usually lasted about 3 hours and was followed by fiddling and dancing, and the spectators joined in. Again, the story of George and the Dragon appears to have been very popular, along with Dr. Foster, which may originate in a corruption of Dr. Faustus, which was certainly also very popular. In Shrewsbury, All St Chad's Churchyard was a favoured location, as was the quarry. Ballads and songs were also very popular, but Lotty notes that few were actually connected to Shropshire. Indeed, it would seem that many originated in northern England or even Scotland. Despite this, many Shropshire villages had a committee to make up ballads of local events. In those days, every labouring man or boy could sing for his supper. It was customary and proper for such and one to acknowledge the gift of refreshment or any kindly act of hospitality by entertaining his hosts with a song. As mentioned in my vlog on traditions, the harvest supper was a popular occasion for singing. Favourite ballads were Sir John Barleycorn, Godspeed the Plough, the Carrion Crow, the Farmer's Boy, the New-Mown Hay, all of which I seem to recall still being sung in the 1960s. One ballad which certainly is from the Marches, but possibly Shropshire, is An English Lady in Love with a Welsh Ploughboy, referring to the tradition of Welsh labourers seeking work in on West Shropshire farms in the May, hiring firms. All in the month of May, when flowers were a-springing, I went into the meadows some pleasure to find. I went into the meadows and turned myself around. I saw a pretty Welsh lad a-ploughing up the ground, and he was a-ploughing his furrows deep and low, cleaving his sods in pieces, his barley to sow. It's a pretty Welsh lad that's all in my mind, and many hours I wondered this young man for to find. An old man came courting me, a man of birth and fame, but I wouldn't have him. My parents did me blame. It's a pretty Welsh lad that runs all in my mind. A poor distressed lady, a Welsh lad to my mind. An old man I do disdain, his wealth and all his store. Give me my ploughboy, and I desire no more. His flower of his country, a diamond in his eye, it is for the pretty Welsh lad I love must die. I wish a pretty skylark would mount up in the sky, that my pretty ploughboy the tidings he might hear. Perhaps he would prove to me and ease my aching heart. It left for the pretty Welsh lad, that I do feel so smart. I'll wait until I see him, to tell him my mind. And if he don't relieve me, I shall think him unkind. And if he'll not grant me his love, then distracted I shall be. Indeed, some grove I'll wander, and no one shall me see. Another song with a definite Shropshire connection tells of the KSLI, the King Shropshire Light Infantry, sailing to St Helena with Lord Hill, then General Hill. General Hill's gone to sea, hey boys, ho boys, General Hill's gone to sea, jolly brave boys. General Hill's gone to sea, and his light company, along with the Shropshire militia boys. Suppose we should meet the French, hey boys, ho boys, suppose we should meet the French, joy brave boys. Suppose we should meet the French, we'd give 'em an English dance, 'cause of the Shropshire military boys. Suppose we should meet the Turks, hey boys, ho boys, suppose we should meet the Turks, joy brave boys. Suppose we should meet the Turks, we'd give 'em tap for tap, 'cause of the Shropshire military boys. Suppose we should meet the Blacks, hey boys, ho boys, suppose we should meet the Blacks, joy brave boys. Suppose we should meet the Blacks, we'd give 'em slap for slap, 'cause of the Shropshire militia boys. Shrewsbury bells shall ring, hey boys, ho boys, Shrewsbury bells shall ring, jolly brave boys. Shrewsbury bells shall ring, when Lord Hill returns again, along with the Shropshire militia. Christmas was naturally a time for carolling. A Wassail Cup is a carol that I remember, and may well have a Shropshire origin. Here we come a wassailing, along the leaves so green, here we come a carolling, so far to be seen. God send you happy, God send John happy, God send all happy new year. We are not daily beggars that beg from door to door, but we are neighbours' children that you have seen before. God send you happy, etc. Call upon the butler of the house, put on his gold ring, and let him bring a pint of beer, and better we shall sing. God send you happy, etc. The streets are very dirty, our shoes are very thin. We've got a little pocket to put a penny in. God send you happy, God bless the master of this house, likewise the missus too, all the little children that about the table go, and God you send you happy, etc. Having said that it has a Shropshire origin, I do recall my cousin, who was a Herefordshire cider farmer, explaining that wassailing was blessing the cider apples. An activity by, yeah, you've guessed it, Morris dancers.